I'm sure most of you are aware of or even watch Brian Tyler Cohen. He's a fellow progressive political commentator. And I came across a moment from his show that was so good I had to play it for you. Normally I don't play clips from other progressive commentator shows because hopefully you're watching them already. So I'm not going to double up here. But this one's too good. So I'll play it to start this conversation. And it's essentially just generally on the subject of the Republican Party's loyalty to Trump and how it's become this party of Trump. It is the Trump party. And that brings people to making the most absurd arguments in the world, like the lawyers arguing for Trump that the president, Trump specifically, would be immune from criminal prosecution if he weren't impeached and convicted on something, even if that something is directing SEAL Team 6 to murder his political opponent. And now Republicans go, yeah, we definitely believe that. Law and order, except for we should have someone completely outside of that process being the president. It's ridiculous. And Brian Tyler Cohen got pretty punchy in this clip in the best of ways. Take a look.
The reality is that far from being these alphas, Republicans want one thing: to be ruled. They want to be under the thumb of whoever seems to them to be the strongest man. All of these conservative commentators and media figures and politicians run around demanding that you know how strong and masculine they are, but the second they see Donald Trump, this 77-year-old reality TV star who can barely walk down a 10% incline and literally doesn't know how to spell the word stolen, they turn into the bachelorettes welcoming the bachelor to the mansion, each one more desperate than the next to get 30 seconds of alone time with him. If they were any more up Trump's ass, they would be able to escape out of his mouth. This guy says out loud that a president should have carte blanche to do quite literally anything and not face criminal prosecution, and the entire conservative ecosystem took it with a shrug. Why? Because they agree. They want it. They are too infatuated with Donald Trump to even consider speaking out against what is effectively the end of democracy. And granted, if Joe Biden said any of this, my God, you would have to prep the fainting couches across the entire country. There wouldn't be a single Republican in existence who wouldn't be out there decrying the fascist rhetoric of that wannabe dictator Joe Biden. But because Trump said it, and they've all taken up residence in the protective warmth of his colon, suddenly it's crickets from the purported party of the Constitution.
Yeah, that's it. You can't say that you have a principle of, or that you stand by your principle of believing and protecting and advocating on behalf of the Constitution and law and order and no one's above the law, and then have the guy who's definitely going to be the nominee in your party argue in court that he should be able to do anything as president and avoid criminal prosecution if he's not impeached and convicted. You just can't. And you can't say you're for the Constitution while that individual is saying we should terminate the Constitution. A massive fraud of this type of magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. That's the exact quote from Trump on Truth Social. Or him saying that the government should come down hard on MSNBC. Or him being a civilly liable rapist in the party of family values. Or him trying to block the peaceful transfer of power essential to our democracy, and he wanted to chuck that in the garbage can. You can't say that your party stands for the Constitution or for our democratic process or for any of these things, which I guess they're giving up on even branding themselves that way, when you're supporting that guy. And it's true that the loyalty to Trump for so many of these leaders, so many of the voters, has become more of a priority than loyalty to our Constitution. And so what we're finding out, and I know this sounds blunt and brutal, but it's true. We're finding out that a lot of people in this country love Donald Trump more than they love our Constitution, more than they love our democracy, more than they love the concept of our country. What's supposed to make our country special is something they would give up because they love Trump that much. They just can't get enough of his incoherent rants and dripping makeup. No, I know it's not that, but whatever it is. And then the weird obsession with having a strongman. Why can't we just elect people who have good policies? If they don't follow through on the promises, we kick them out after their term's up. We vote them out of office, and then we have meaningful policy discussions. Why does it have to be one guy that you fall so hard for that nothing he says or does really matters because you're so bought into him? Now, I want to remind you of the moment that's being referred to from this wild moment in court, Trump's lawyer arguing the most absurd thing you could imagine.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
What if he weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is
no. My answer is qualified yes.
It's no, it's so aggravating. Listen to that. So, because I guess they don't feel like they can argue effectively that Trump isn't guilty of the things he's being accused of in terms of trying to overthrow our democratic process and of putting together the fraudulent slate of electors, trying to get Pence to count phony electors. Is the craziest thing. I can't believe that anyone would be okay with this. Most of them don't even understand what happened, but if you understand it and you're okay with it, you just don't believe in our democracy. Trump trying to putting together slates of fraudulent electors and then trying to get those counted instead of the real ones to just say, I won the Electoral College when he didn't. Or find me 11,780 votes. Trying to get local officials, not just that instance, but obviously very prominently that instance, to just find phony votes and say that Trump won a state that he lost. Or after those didn't work, trying to get Pence to just say, we're not going to certify the electoral count. And then sicking a mob on his vice president that chanted hang Mike Pence because he didn't do the thing that the Constitution absolutely prohibits him from doing. Or generally inciting that mob to attack the Capitol to block the certification of the election. And Trump's lawyers know there's a lot of evidence that Trump did all those things. And so they feel like maybe we can just argue he should be immune from everything. I don't know if we can say, if they have the right to criminally prosecute him, that he's not guilty of the things, but maybe we can say they just don't have the right to criminally prosecute him. It's stunning. And it's a violation of every constitutional principle that Republicans said they stood by. And that's the moment that we're in. Here's a Republican who, despite the massive differences in policies that we have and my massive criticisms of her policies, does at least check the most basic box, which is abiding by the Constitution and being willing to support the Constitution. And that's Liz Cheney, who essentially gave up her position in Congress to speak out against Donald Trump and to call out his threat to democracy. And she spoke at the Ebenezer Baptist Church yesterday during MLK Day and had this to say about Donald Trump.
My friends, as we meet this afternoon, a great lie is doing its work, poisoning the bloodstream of our democracy. A former president refuses to acknowledge that he lost, and he has convinced millions that our elections and our democracy no longer work. He threatens the foundations of our nation and everything Dr. King persevered to save. If given the chance, this former president's allies in Congress will once again ignore the rulings of our nation's courts, the outcome of our elections and the words of our Constitution. As they claim for themselves the right to throw out the votes of millions of Americans and install their former leader as our president, we must not let them prevail.
And that's exactly right. That's what this election is about. It's crazy. It's hard to believe. It feels like surely it's hyperbolic to say democracy is on the line in this election. Surely we can't be genuinely experiencing that type of pivotal moment in American history. But we are. They were okay with him, as she said, installing himself as the president. That's what would have happened if these schemes had worked. They didn't, but he could try again this time and maybe it'll work. And that's what they were okay with previously. Then he has that track record, then added on top of it promises about a second term, such as I'll be a dictator, but it's a joke. Or all the things I talk about on a daily basis, the termination of the Constitution, the targeting of media outlets, the execution of his former top general, etc. The installing of loyalists across the bureaucracy so no one pushes back on him. The invoking of the Insurrection Act so the military can crush demonstrations against him. Again, we've gone through all of this Project 2025 frightening stuff, and that has to be stopped by us voting against him. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel.